as something of a flag for our Cascadia Field Guide tour, which will continue on to Spokane tomorrow. So this is our flag, and we just need to get a pole. So if anybody has a pole, come see me after. Okay, I am going to read you, oh, yeah, one more thing. Thank you for being here with us tonight. The land knows we are here. Somehow I feel that the beings in the land know we are here, celebrating them and this terrifically diverse place we call our home. I want to thank you. I want to thank Jim and Sasha Wolpart, who have been so gracious in hosting us. Ollie and the Lion Rock Visiting Writers Program, and of course, Gallery One, and all the lovely humans who make it what it is. Thank you for having us here with you tonight. So I'm going to read to you first of all what we call a being story that we wrote for each of the species represented in this field guide, and then I'll read the poem that accompanies it. And this is for hoary marmot. They are sometimes called whistle pig. You know why if you've heard them shriek. This rotund being sunning on a rock, the largest of the squirrel family. No matter their name, this being's life looks pretty ideal from where we stand. Marmot spends half of the morning lying around on warm rocks and the rest of the day eating. And then they retire to their burrow for their evening rest. But marmot's whistle is more than a tune. Hoary marmot whistles to scare off predators, such as coyote, eagle, and fox. Hoary marmot is named for their pelt. Hoary means aged gray or white, and speaks to the silvery fur of this being, particularly around the head and shoulders. The rest of marmot is reddish-brown bodied and black-footed. In fact, Caligata means booted. Liliut and Nuxalk people value this being for both fur and meat. Traditionally, 4 tribal groups, Nootka, Kwakwaka, Chimchim, and Tlingit, hunt hoary marmot. But South Central Washington and North Central Oregon natives not, for fear of eating marmot's whistle will cause them to go mad. Hoary marmot is characteristically charismatic, more sumo wrestler than distance runner. Sometimes marmot will spar for hours, standing on back legs, grasping forepaws, and merely pushing against one another, which, by the way, they do for fun. Those living around humans are not shy about approaching for a treat. They do best on a diet of green plants and seeds, though, so keep your sandwich for yourself. Marmot mating brings about 2 to 4 pups and happens just after they emerge from the burrows where they have stayed for as many as 8 months, living off the fat layer they accumulated before winter. When food is plentiful, hoary marmot lives in colonies with a dominant male attending mating duties. When times are lean, 1 male and 1 female alone birth and raise their brood. Marmot often benefits other beings in their community. Abandoned holes become homes for other small mammals, and in moderation, their digging and defecation loosens, aerates, and improves the soil. So don't let their sirens scare you off. These wilderness whistlers may be reminding you to pay attention, or just to stretch out across the warm rocks and take a nap. flies up from Irvine and starts clapping. I mean, come on. And here's the poem called How We Look. Fur fat and stock still in the trail, they appear to be looking into a mythic sky, posed for a feral portrait, or a wish to draw us closer before they turn and level a frontal marmot scrutiny. The way their noses aim askance says they're not here, or we are gone, or we are here, but they're not sure. Upright on boulders, they're ready to tumble at the shrill signal if we become, in a blink, by sneeze or shuffle, believable. Our pack-heavy shapes gathered in their sky look up to Shuckson. How distant and present it juts. How sharp a lookout. Clarity we envy through tilted glass until from every nowhere the whiteout. When the peak disappears, we turn and labor down the moraine, switchbacking like mules silently spaced in the falling snow. While we drive our miles and climb to bright rooms, they settle below in a general huddle, slowing for their long dream. Between one flake and the infinite next, one pulse beat and the second, our burdened forms waver and loom, weave and are gone. So it is my pleasure now to introduce my amazing co-editor, Liz Bradfield.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for coming out on this rainy evening. It's such a pleasure to be here with you, with the poets and the artists who have given so much heart and time to the beings of this book, and to be with the original art, which I mean, I was thrilled with what I saw come in digitally, but to be in the presence of the originals is so amazing. I bought one.
Not the Dipper.
Not the Dipper. No. But I do encourage you to spend some time looking at the art on the walls. You know, these 13 communities of the book, we deliberately wanted to have 13 different artists from different regions of Cascadia, from different aesthetic approaches, from you know, the beautiful scientific illustration-based, although whimsical work of Emily Poole, to the more national parks-esque watercolors of Travis London. Rachel Kessler, who's not here in the room, has these kind of Linda Berry cartoon loose drawings, the gorgeously fine work of Justin Gibbens. And we just wanted to invite all kinds of different aesthetic styles and to have the beings in community be in visual community. I so love Derek reading the Hoary Marmot being story. You know, this is a field guide. You've got all the facts you need to know about these beings in these stories, but they're told as you would tell a story. So we don't have range, distribution, habitat, size, you know, that's there. But it's buried into the story because we want to invite people in who might not ordinarily stock up on or pile up field guides like Derek and I have to embarrassing abundance. So I'm going to read the being story for Pacific Madrona, and then the poem, which is mine, that engages that same being. I am on, thank you for asking, page 104. This is part of the Coastal Urban Woods community that Sarah Van Sanden's art graces, and her work is up on the second floor over there. And you can see the original. Pacific Madrona is a tree very dear to me. I grew up in Tacoma, Washington, and I love this being. So here's the being story for Pacific Madrona, not Madrone. Madrona's skin, smooth and bright chartreuse when young, then aging to a brittle cinnamon red that curls from their trunk in delicate papers perfect for writing secret notes, is unmistakable. This tree's white, urn-shaped flowers hang in large, drooping sprays that, in fall, become bumpy, orange-red berries prized by robin, cedar waxwing, varied thrush, and quail. People find Madrona's berries bitter, though they can be used as bait for steelhead, perhaps because of their resemblance to fish roe. Also called madrone, madronio, and arbutus, Madrona grows tall as a 3-story building and bears evergreen leaves that are oval, shiny, and dark. No wonder Madrona was mistaken by interloper George Vancouver as magnolia. In fact, Madrona is the only broadleaf evergreen native to Cascadia and is North America's most northerly broadleaf evergreen. Madrona does shed their leaves, but not all at once, bit by bit, like Sitka spruce or Douglas fir. Madrona grows along the coast from southern British Columbia to San Diego, tolerating a wide range of temperatures and rainfall. You think Madrona's hardy? Think again. Although tough in their ideal conditions, this tree is fragile outside them. It turns out Madrona's health is incompatible with modern human land development, such as pavement and lawns. Madrona likes sunny, well-drained areas and is fire adapted, resprouting quickly after a burn. Notoriously difficult to transplant, most likely because of their critical relationship with mycorrhizal fungi. Madrona resists human interference, so we must learn about their historic ecology in order to nurture them now. Some people call Madrona the refrigerator tree because the trunk is always, even in the height of summer, cool. Straight Salish tribes say that survivors of the Great Flood anchored their canoe to Madrona at the mountaintop, and in gratitude for Madrona's help, they do not use the wood as fuel. As fuel. The tree is sacred. So that's the being story. You know, the key to, I think, knowing any place is knowing it in multiple ways. Knowing it through your body, through the information you've learned, for the emotional responses that you have, for what you see, smell, taste, feel. And we wanted the field guide to allow these different points of information, different points of entry. Information through the being stories, poetry through emotion and more information in a different way, art through another type of information. So here's the poem for Madrona, and its title is Succession. In the neighborhood called Magnolia, they've planted magnolia trees to right an old mistake made when George Vancouver's crew saw thick-leaved madronas on bluffs over Elliott Bay and misnamed them. Magnolia trees outside the coffee shop, magnolia trees. Native to this continent, but not its northwest coast, land of cedar and salal. They are leafed out, staked up, witness to our desire for truth-making. Outside the post office on Magnolia, magnolias. Magnolias glossy and tended by the antique store, fenced in the sidewalk by the bus stop. Meanwhile, the madronas, whose peeling trunks, burnt orange and sleek, colors layering from Granny Smith to pomegranate, papery with curls I've peeled and scrawled, here since the last glaciation, slow-growing and picky, waste away in neighborhood parks while beautification committees worry and try, unable to hear what for madronas is truth. What the tree wants is burning, to burn among huckleberry and Oregon grape, then bud from the leftover roots. Moldered by lawn and dogs and all we've brought with us to make things nice. The madronas wait for lightning, for some untended spark to argue their need against our clipped and tended ideas of care. To introduce the artist of the Coastal Urban Woods community, the amazing paper-cut, phenomenal, delicate, accurate, visionary Sarah Van Sanden.
of people. They're the first things I notice when I wake up in the morning, and they're fundamental to how I earn my living. And so when I was asked to participate in the Cascadia Field Guide project, it offered me a chance to dive a little deeper and explore my relationships to plants in a deeper and fundamentally different way than I often do. A new kind of intimacy with more familiar friends that I return to the same place over the course of days or weeks to watch leaf out, over the course of seasons and years to grow and sometimes to die.
Don't mind me.
No problem. Thank you. And particularly for the trees, the beings in the coastal urban woods community, the complexities in my mind really demanded collapsing multiple scales and moments in their life cycles into a single composition. That didn't happen in every instance, but I just needed to bring all of that to bear in a single image. And in working with the animals, I had a different relationship to them, whereas plants for me, I experienced mostly stationary. The animal beings in this community were more fleeting in my experience. They're more mysterious to me, so they would dart through my field of vision. If they're a bird, maybe dig holes that, as a person in the landscape industry, found incredibly annoying in the case of the beaver. Or they might pollinate the flowers that I might make my living with. So a mountain beaver, for example, has only ever made itself visible to me one time, and that was in Turkey Park in Seattle, Washington, and it was amazing. But in the case of both flora and fauna, committing to the medium of cut paper meant committing to the strengths and limitations of the medium, figuring out how thin a branch could be, or how long a whisker could be, and how much complex curvature I could incorporate into a teeny tiny leaf margin of the vine maple. And the process of cutting, which is sort of laborious and tiny. I would get so focused on the minuscule details that I would forget to take a step back, and I'd finish and look at something and realize that it was more than just a jumble of points, but it was actually this composition that was kind of marvelous to find. And ultimately, I think it's important to point out that I chose to make these images come together to sing in a way that was not about scientific accuracy. And I think the most important example of that is that I allowed myself to have the scales of the Western red cedar be alternate and then really they're opposite. But that was exciting to let myself just go in that direction, exaggerate, have fun. And, sometimes that expressive potential kind of converged in ways, like the ways that I depicted the antennae on the Blue Orchard Basin bee in similarity with the way that I depicted the scales of the Western red cedar, for example. And then other times they totally diverged, like the Madrona is a very jagged form, and the vine maple is very fluid and flowy. So this was a fun series of discoveries for me. And then the next layer of that discovery is just seeing how, as my work has come into the field guide, it interacts and converges and diverges with the other visual art and also the incredible written work in the book. So thank you so much. I really appreciate the opportunity to speak. Next is Jack Watson.
I live in the pine forest. Pine forest, and my bee is the western rattlesnake. The Nez Perce tradition says a charm against evil is invoked by placing the Washipu's head on hot coals in the earth and covering it with fresh liver and gall from other wild beings. During the steaming, the liver is thought to absorb venom from the head, which is then carried as a talisman. But it is not the head we usually think of when we think of Western rattlesnake. Many traditions, myths, and beliefs center around the being whose tail is often a charm and bite is sometimes fatal. Though the hinged fangs carry a deadly venom, the tail is surprisingly empty. Instead of functioning like a maraca to make its namesake sound, the outer shell of the rattle, made of keratin, clicks together. Special shaker muscles in the tail allow the tip to vibrate up to 90 times per second. Though this rattle often evokes fear, as it should, rattlesnake wants to avoid conflict. Though this rattle often evokes fear, as it should, rattlesnake wants to avoid conflict. Do you believe that?
Yes.
They are generally quite docile and run or slither from you as quickly as you from them. Though most of what we think about when rattlesnake comes to mind is the sound and the bite, it is actually smell that is their strongest sensory organ. Those nostrils are great for breathing, but that split tongue does the smelling, almost. It reaches out and grabs molecules from the air and brings them to the snake's Jacobson organ, a chemoreceptor located in the nasal cavity. This organ helps decode the molecules into smells. Rattlesnake, who can live up to 20 years, has few natural predators. They have long been persecuted by humans. And the poem this being inspired is called Leaving the Garden. It's on page 201. Leaving the garden. When a great northern swallows the tracks, we work in the garden without talking. We leave our weed pulling to walk the fire trail to the river. A car's wheels hiss up Derby Canyon. The Wenatchee crawls below the rail bed, snakes toward the Columbia. We glimpse an osprey overhead and try to spot a catbird meowing high in pine branches. We hear quail rattle the wild roses, the snowberries. So, he sees us before we see him. A brown and yellow spotted snake, his flat head balanced above his tail. A sudden rattle, a rainbird sprinkler striking tin. All things move in coils. In smooth roots and yellow grass, the sky disappears. I forgot to introduce
Andy
Gottlieb.
Hi,
Sorry.
Hi everyone, I'm Andy Gottlieb, and I'll be reading from page 258 if you're following along. What a pleasure to be here with old friends and new friends and wonderful people in this gorgeous space. My being was the West Slope cutthroat trout. So first I'll read the story on the trout and then I'll read my poem. To hold West Slope cutthroat trout in your hands is to hold a dream of clear, fast water, winters in deep lakes, and the secrets of headwaters where this being often lives. Perhaps this is whom trout lily is named for. Their spring spawning is a gift for predators and those of us who spend long afternoons lying on the shores of perennial streams with the hopes of glimpsing a spawning West Slope. And to see one is fortunate indeed. The introduction of kokanee, lake trout, and whitefish into Cascadia has been great for sport fishing, but disastrous for West Slope. Their numbers have decreased by 90% or more. And it's not just the competition. Livestock grazing, agriculture, logging, road building, mining, and dam construction reduce the number of spawning cutthroat each year. In fact, this being, who can live in rivers or lakes or migrate between both, inhabits only 59% of their historical range. West Slope cutthroat makes up in splendor what they lack in size. In fact, a West Slope over 5 pounds is extremely rare. Not a pescatarian like other trout, this being prefers a diet of aquatic invertebrates, think worms and bugs. One of the wonders of the West Slope is the glorious color they display as a juvenile. Belly, a sunset blush of crimson, transitioning into an upside-down sunrise that spills into a chartreuse meadow dappled with black spots. Rose moles all in stipple, as Gerard Manley Hopkins writes. Oh, West Slope cutthroat, we will never get enough of you. And my poem is called The Walking Gods, and is really from the point of view of being in the forest and looking for the cutthroat. The weight of the descending flow, cold, heavy, dedicated to places downstream, confronts you while you stare alone for giant cutthroat, mythic in the deepest pools. There are gods in these woods, walking slopes and meadows, the weight of seasoned legs plunging spongy hole to hole. A river never forgives, never compromises its vision. The biggest boulders thunder as they trundle on the bottom. Deep in the old growth, there's a presence, a recent breath, the deepest scent on rocks left traced by the navigation of mosses. A walking stick and a steady step prevent accidental drowning. The river's intimate tug presses its indifferent love like a rope. Elsewhere, the tall gods bustle. One stubborn bowl leans over like the oldest, strictest teacher. Thank you. And it's my pleasure to introduce next Maya Jewell Zeller. Maya, where are you?
Andy, that was so gorgeous. Thank you. Oh, thank you. Thanks for being here, and thanks to all the people who are up with the art upstairs. It's fun that we're interspersed throughout the gallery, like we're all in our different regions. So thanks for being all over the place. I also want to again just thank Liz and Derek and CMarie for putting together this gorgeous anthology, and Gallery One for hosting us, and all the people who helped promote it. Before, I want to give one more round of applause for the artists, because I think that oftentimes we come to these events and we're applauding the people reading, and just one more round of applause to the artists. I'm going to read the being story for Yellow Skunk Cabbage, and if you'd like to follow along, it's on page 61. Yeah, skunk, right, Tatum? The deep, lush, paddle-shaped leaves of skunk cabbage are one of the first greens to green in Cascadia's spring, pushing up even through snow with a metabolic heat of their own creation. In fact, the bright yellow bog lanterns of skunk cabbage emerge even before the leaves and glow in understory light. Their warmth, shelter, and smell draw in beetle and fly, skunk cabbage's prime pollinators. These early lights are a message to people too, as traditional wisdom says that in Alaska, when skunk cabbage appears, it's time to fish for king salmon. One of the first flowering plants to evolve, skunk cabbage was on Earth before bee and birds and other sweet-lured, nectar-loving pollinators. I can tell that poets wrote these beans. I just write this beans. I can hear Derek in it, I can hear CMarie in it, I can hear the beans. Okay. Got excited there. Shelter and a slight carrion scent are skunk cabbage's enticements. peer into skunk cabbage's yellow sconce and examine the spadix, that club studded with over 100 greenish-yellow petalless flowers. Surely you'll find many small beings inside. In Cascadia, our yellow skunk cabbage does not have the stink of their eastern radicchio-colored cousins, though they do offer a pleasant musk. If you notice a uniform scallop taken from each tip in a splay of skunk cabbage greens, that's a sign of deer nipping the young leaves when they were furled together. Deer also like the tips of the flower stalks. Do you see upturned earth and shreds of white tubers in a patch of skunk cabbage? That was probably brown bear digging for a good meal. While people don't savor the lush vegetation because of the intense oxalic acid, which causes a burning sensation similar to what some feel upon eating mounds of spinach, and it's also present in rhubarb, wood sorrel. If you go to the woods, eat wood sorrel that has oxalic acid. Okay, so I guess that's what which causes a burning sensation similar to what some may feel eating mounds of spinach. There are a multitude of uses for these large, resilient leaves: food storage, steaming wraps, and basket liners. The roots of skunk cabbage, which is related to taro, a staple in Hawaiian and Polynesian cultures, have traditional medicinal uses for treating respiratory issues. In the muskeg proper, skunk cabbage is small in response to more acidic conditions, but in a rich, damp area by a stream, they can grow as tall as your waist. I've seen them taller, I've seen them shorter. Nothing more fully evokes the forest primeval than a swath of skunk cabbage. One of my personal favorite plants, so I'm really thrilled that I get to have it. I'm gonna just tell just the briefest story, is that okay, just really briefly. When I was a kid, I actually grew up moving a lot, and so actually I love, Sarah, what you said, plants are how I begin conversations with the world. And I think plants are how I begin conversations with the world too, but often with plants. So when I was a kid, I moved around a lot, and I just didn't have friends, okay? I was kind of dorky, read a lot, went to the library, but every time I moved, it'd be, hello Salal, hello skunk cabbage, and my friends were in the new location, because I lived in the Pacific Northwest. So the skunk cabbage is a really dear plant to me, and when I was in my 20s, I was writing a series of odes to these plants, and this poem, Skunk Cabbage, I didn't write for this book, so I was really pleased. Thank you so much for allowing an older poem to be in the book, but I wrote this when I was about 26. Skunk cabbage. Your spiked flower hardly knows its own allure. Like lemon cookie, like hooded clitoris. Shake you and you let go dew. Your name means dew in Hebrew, my mother tells me at 13. I've spent the day staring at skunk cabbage, rubbing the stamen glow between fingers, learning its curve and the pulpy, bumped berries flushing its core. If I were water, I'd catch in the cup of you, swamp lantern. I'd reside in the light, the rosette of your hips. I've never said prayer so loud in a poem before, so thanks for being my first audience for that. I'm going to try to get it involved. Up next, we have Cascadia contributor and Ellensburg sensation, Javier Cavazos.
It's such an honor to be here with this gathering and really to be part of this collection, which for me has roots going back 20 years when Kathy Whitcomb first invited Elizabeth Bradfield to come to one of our classes here at Central Washington University, and we were looking at broadside that you were putting out and letterpress quality literature and art. And that's really a lot of what I see happening in our community is just an appreciation for literature and for art and the merging of all of that together. I just want to say a quick note. I'm on page 240, and I have the cutest little animal, Columbia Basin pygmy rabbit. So if you have children, don't show them the Columbia Basin pygmy rabbit because they will want it. And so when I was first asked for commission to write this poem, a lot of social and civil unrest was happening within our country. George Floyd had happened. I think the attack on the Capitol had happened. Donald Trump had happened. Pedophile Matt Gaetz had happened. All this stuff was happening. And so Derek first reached out to me and asked about this poem. And somehow I took all of that happened and I sent back like 15,000 words. This crazy rant, social, political rant, and I was so proud of it. I was literally like flexing and just like, this is it. This is the poem that's going to change the world. I think poets, we all think that we're going to write a poem that's going to change the world, and I really thought I had it. And I could only imagine now, like seeing the book and seeing like what the book's really about, like what they all thought when they when they opened their email, and bless Derek's heart, you know, his first line, I think, if I remember right, was like, "Hav, I get it, but," and so he really was supporting me in all my angst and social injustice that was happening. And so maybe I cut out like 10 words, and then I think he had Elizabeth email me next, and then it was like, well, did you look at the examples that are going to be in the book? So I let that dream die slowly one night, but the long story of this is all of the research that went into it, the scientific research, the fun, the emotion that goes into writing politically charged poetry, made it somehow still into the 20 words that it eventually be, in 20 or 20 some words. And so I always talk about that, you know, when you write something, that there should be some research behind it. Maybe not, 1,000 words to one, but something like that. And in the end, I was so happy for the editors and for having that and being open enough, because I was really like, I was really on fire about this, and I was ready to die on the hill over, I'm a person of color being asked to write about an environmental injustice thing, but now what I'm writing is not even close to what they were expecting. And I get that, so I really appreciate all of you for taking time with me on that. So what survived will be this little poem I read at the end of this beginning story. So the Columbia, and there is, the cutout is there, right over there, if anyone's interested in looking at the world's cutest little animal and purchasing it for the artist that painted it. The world's smallest rabbit might also be considered the world's cutest. Columbia Basin pygmy rabbit can fit in the palm of your hand. Soft gray fur, short, round ears, and eyes like drops of obsidian peering into yours. Like greater sage grouse, they rely on big sagebrush for most of their food, as well as for cover to keep them hidden from weasel, coyote, and other predators. Unlike other rabbits, who use existing burrows created by other beings, pygmy rabbit digs their own in loose sandy soil. Once their burrow is created, they become the ultimate homebodies and range only up to about 300 feet away from one of 4 or 5 of the burrow's entrances for the rest of their life. Columbia Basin pygmy rabbits is mostly crepuscular, meaning they are most active during dawn and dusk when dim light gives them the best chance for staying hidden while foraging or socializing. They can have several litters during the spring and summer, filling their burrows with tiny squirming kits. As such, as much of the Shrub-Steppe has been lost or fragmented due to human activity, Columbia pygmy rabbit's population has declined to near extinction. In 2001, only 16 remained in Washington. But with the help of caring humans, the wide population is showing signs of recovery. During winter months, in search of food, pygmy rabbits tunnel from their burrows to nearby plants. So, The next time you gaze out across a snow-covered Shrub-Steppe, imagine all the life going on below. The Columbia Basin pygmy rabbit. It's written from their point of view. When I dream, fuego is a bobcat's open mouth, an owl's turning eye gaze. When fuego dreams, raven, weasel, and even I are called by name. Kindle, kindle, kindling. Thank you. I just want to one quick announcement. The next Lion Rock event that's it's gonna be hard to follow up. Tana Bambrick's amazing 2-day events here at Central. So we're gonna try, and we, along with the NEA and the Brooks Library, Big Read is bringing Ross Gay, poet Ross Gay. And so they are giving out, in the corner of the gallery, they are giving out copies of Ross Gay's book, Catalog of Unabashed Gratitude. So if you don't have a copy of the book, please grab one.
And there's an event on Saturday at the Gardens.
And there's an event on Saturday at the
Campus Farm.
At the Campus Farm, Letters from Garden Writing, Saturday, April 22nd. There's a ton of events happening, so please join us in being part of that. And if you would like to even read on Saturday, May 6th, outside the public library at 11, find me and I will put a microphone in your hand and you will read poetry that day. So thank you, we have it going on. It's a real honor to introduce our next poet, Katherine Whitcomb.
This is such a wonderful project to be included in, and it's one that I felt so strongly about being involved with these wonderful editors that I've known for a long time, and I'm just so thrilled. My being story and poem is about the snowberry, and it's part of the urban shore bioregion. And the art is by the exuberant Rachel Kessler, and I only wish her art was here. It's too bad it's not, but you can look her up in here. It's very expressive and cartoony, and I just love it. And her illustration for Snowberry says, "Yo, Snowberry, come to me." And I'm gonna wear my glasses. And this is page 173. In spring, you might see the blueberry-like pink blooms that lead to Snowberry's pale fruits. In summer, the berries disappear behind dusty green oval leaves, and once the leaves are down in late fall, Snowberry shines. The cluster of bright white berries, tightly grouped in bundles of 7 or more, each with a sweet button of a navel, pop from the winter's brown canes like little glowing lights, whether in the woodlands, along riverbanks, or in city parks. Snowberry is not endemic to Cascadia. They grow throughout temperate North America, but they are iconic in our coastal urban woods, where they thrive in city parks and ungroomed lots. A resourceful being, Snowberry propagates both by seeds and by underground rhizomes, which are particularly helpful after fire. The rhizomes are buried 2 to 5 inches in the soil, just enough to protect them. After the above-ground vegetation has burned away, snowberries' new shoots are among the first to rise, providing much-needed forage and shade in a burned landscape. Can you eat them? Is a question we often ask of berries. In Cascadia, there are very few berries that are not delicious. Some consider snowberry one, though traditionally berries are eaten fresh or dried or stored for winter. Indigenous names for the plant include those translated as corpseberry or snakeberry, intimidating as that may be, the bark of snowberry is used traditionally by Coast Salish tribes to treat skin problems. The berries are shampoo, and the light hollow canes as arrow shafts or pipe stems. Deer, bear, bighorn sheep, and many, many birds rely on snowberry for forage, and even more beings find shelter in snowberries thickets, a word I love, thickets. As you wander the winter shore, see to one side and a chaos of brown brambles and shrubs to the other, you'll delight in snowberry's bright glow along your path. And I sure learned a lot about snowberry writing this poem for the anthology, and I'm glad I did. And it made me realize how much I had seen the snowberry before, all over the place, without knowing what it was or what it could do, and what it is doing there on the hillside. So this is snowberry in drought season. Snowberry in drought season. Chinook winds dry out the eastern slopes of the Cascades. Snowberry thickets, pale pink flowers give over in August to bone white berries. Good full brush stays green for deer, elk, and bighorns. Black bears browse the berries. Drought season is a hard season after a hard season and a hard one again. Snowberry lives, rainless, wind-battered, no matter. Grouse, quail, and thrushes in their arms. Gophers chew root stems in the dark. Rabbits sleep curled underneath, burrowed all winter. Snowberry holds up hillsides in their root nests, thick catch-all webs covering abandoned land. Devastation and ruins from old mines taken back. Even burned, snowberry revives with a little sleet melt. Seeds cracked, seeds spread by birds up and down the dry eastern slopes. My great pleasure to invite up here Cascadian artist Justin Gibbens.
Thank you, Kathy. Well, hey, hi. I cannot think of a better way to commemorate Earth Day than to be here, gathered in this space, celebrating this book. So, one more time, let's give it up for Derek. And you know, I was thinking as Hob, you were up here and describing the arduous process you went through to get the green light on your poem. I'm wondering if maybe correlation is not causation, but this is a 5-year process, and I'm wondering if much of that 5 years was the re-editing of Well, I think some of you are probably familiar with my work, but I was gonna give you a little brief description of my approach to my craft and my experience with working on this project. So, as a wildlife artist and illustrator, I create critters that share this space with us. Creatures that scamper and poke about in the undergrowth, that slither in the thickets. And creatures that swoop and soar through the skies above. I grew up drawing boyhood standards, dinosaurs, creepy crawlers, and aliens from a galaxy far, far away. Eventually, I went to art school. I studied fine line painting in China for a spell, and then I earned a scientific illustration certificate at the University of Washington. And these things have coalesced in my studio practice where I use ink, watercolor, and brush to depict images of both the familiar and maybe the not so familiar inhabitants that share this planet Earth with us. So I was honored to be invited to contribute to this project. Again, thank you, Derek. And you know, we did this program earlier today, and I shared a story, and with your permission, may I share the story one more time? So Derek reached out to me, and after agreeing to be a part of the project, he sent me the beans list of what I'd be working on, and of course it was the Shrub-Steppe. I thought, oh, this is so fortuitous. I have lived in eastern and central Washington my whole life, and he's given me the Shrub-Steppe. And then about 5 minutes later, another email came in and said, oops, I was cutting and pasting. You're doing the eastern rivers. So I got to illustrate the Idaho beans. Idaho, how about that? So, realizing that this was not going to be a typical field guide, I knew that there would be a little more creative license with the task at hand. Traditionally, a scientific illustrator's job is to visually distill the very critical information of a subject or specimen as accurately as possible, revealing only the most essential information that's necessary. But knowing that this book was going to take more of a sideways glance to these subjects, I opted to use watercolor and ink washes to create images that were a bit more subtle, maybe more nuanced, and in some cases rather abstracted. I felt the images would operate most effectively if they complemented the written text without being too explicitly rendered. And knowing that these illustrations would be sharing space on a page with poems about these beings, I wanted my images to be poetic in nature. As I understand it, creative writing of this sort relies so much on the reader's own imagination to fill in all of the proverbial blanks. So I wanted to really do the same with my illustrations. As with music, it isn't so much about the notes that are played, but rather the rests, the negative space. And finally, I want to also say that it's worth mentioning that as one of the contributing artists, it was a real honor to, first of all, to be asked to be a part of this, but then to be told that really we could take these illustrations wherever we wanted to go with them. And that even though it was a field guide, we did not have to be so literal in our interpretations. And so that was really liberating to hear, though sometimes it's nice to just be told what to do. But in any case, we were given the list of beans, and we were encouraged to just use these as a jumping off point. And in some cases, some of the texts were shared with us too. And again, it was iterated and reiterated that by no means were we to simply illustrate these. These are just places to launch from. So that's what I attempted to do. So, thank you.
One more thing about the art. We're very lucky that Claire Emery's beautiful woodcuts are up top there, alongside actually Justin's work. But the toughest thing for these artists, we're like, okay, here are your beings. We've got all these individual beings, fine. Then we're like, now, can you put them all together in one single image? To do an overview image, and that's a huge challenge. And how do they come into relation, and how will they engage with each other, and what all of the different artists did was so exciting to see, and for us to ask these artists to do this work and then wait and see what they're going to do, what approach are they going to take, how will these things emerge, was so exciting for us and creating the guide. We're just, the work that the artists put in and the heart and the talent that they brought is overwhelming, and we feel so grateful.
Now, I think you heard what I heard, that Justin Gibbens said, sometimes it's nice to just be told what to do. Well, we tried. So now it's my turn to tell a story. So we looked really closely at his website. We saw these different shows he had done, and we picked a style that we really liked. We just fell in love with, and we said, hey, Justin, we'd love for you to do it in this style, this show. And this was a phone call, and there was a pause. And I heard, yeah, no, I'm not gonna do that. Okay, so yeah, just do what you wanna do, and we'll love it. That's almost verbatim. And I really appreciate what I understood is he had done that already, and he wanted another chance to grow as an artist. And that's what he did in these pieces. Give them a close look. And Sarah's and Claire's, Travis's, my gosh, they're just sublime. I've got to apologize because we've got a real problem, and that is that we can't keep the book in stock. We didn't bring enough copies. There are some copies with us tonight. There are 5 left that we were able to bring. I know they had some here at the gallery. They kept selling out. It's actually been a problem across the bioregion. We are really happy to have this problem. We hear from the press that it is selling at about 1,000 copies a week are finding readers. It has consistently made the bestseller list for the Pacific Northwest Booksellers Association since March 1st, and we are just so grateful. And I have no problem bragging about this book because I am a small part of it. I mean, you've heard from the amazing artists and poets, some of them that we've gathered for this effort. And please, if you take a copy home, if you're one of the 5 lucky few to take a copy home with you tonight, or you already have one, or you go out and find one at your local indie bookstore, we like supporting the ecosystem of indie bookstores. I know Book for All Seasons in Leavenworth has a big stack still. Yeah, if you get one, maybe if you have a moment and you think about it, drop a review at Goodreads or Amazon or REI. You can find it's stocked in all the REI stores now. Every REI store online, REI. I mean, wow, are you kidding me? You can buy Justin Gibbens artwork at REI. But yeah, maybe think about dropping a review and doing what you can. We really want to get the attention of the NEA Big Reads program. That's our goal. And listen, if you didn't get enough Cascadia tonight, more is coming down to this area in September with Lit Views. Jen, what are the dates of Lit Views?
September 22nd to 24th.
22nd to the 24th. And do you have Liz Bradfield coming back for that?
Yes, I do.
How about, do you have CMarie Fuhrman?
I think so.
CMarie Fuhrman's going to be there. Okay, excellent. And I'll be there. So, yeah, we're going to have some more fun. And Kathy Whitcomb's going to be there. Who else is going to be there?
Javier is going to be there.
Ah, all right. He's got a class on the long poem. Yeah, so September, okay, lit fuse, Mighty Titan, great, more coming. So there's 5 books, and there's chairs. Oh, what's this about?
I was just gonna say, we have a sign-up sheet if anybody's local and they want us to run down there and contact the folks before it's more books.
Okay. There's a sign-up sheet. There's chairs, these are foldable chairs, and I understand that it's a tradition here at Gallery 1 to hold up your chair and walk it up to the mezzanine out back there. There's a curtain. There's a little man behind the curtain. And don't pay no attention to him, just put your chair back there, right? Okay. Thank you all for being here tonight.